his children about this sense of playfulness that he remembers about FDR, this warmth, this largeness of spirit. It's Eleanor, though, who my father came to really be close with as an adult. They worked at the UN together for a number of years. I've been blessed to already hear a number of stories about some of you here tonight and your encounters with Eleanor. He would go back to her during breaks in college. He would go back to her apartment in New York City. And it was a relationship that deeply informed and guided his life. And he calls her his mentor and his senior teacher, even 45 years after her death. And he says this about Graumer's legacy. My grandmother spent her whole adult life working for justice and democracy, never losing track of the fact that individual human lives were at the heart of that work. Both great-grandparents had, I think, what could be described in almost religious language as a sense of call, a sense of being called. It was broad in its reach, and I think they've impacted me and inspired me, obviously indirectly, as I never got to know them, but through my father, through what I learn of them and their lives and choices, how they guided this country, how they guided this world, through what people tell me about them. And I won't talk about their particular legacies, as that is not only way beyond the scope of this conversation tonight, but also because most of you know much better than I what it was like to live through those years, because it shaped your generation and your values and what you care about. And that, in turn, has shaped my generation's values. So I feel like we're part of a chain here, a very sacred chain, that in a lot of ways I trace to those years where we had FDR and Eleanor at the head of the ship. I'll just say this. FDR represented the American people and their trials in a way that no president has before. He guided this country through its darkest and most difficult days with vision, with courage, with greatness. And Eleanor is one half of that political team, but even increasingly after the death of her husband, was a prophetic leader in her own right, really the first lady of the world. And her commitment to, in her words, being useful, she would always say that her drive to be useful, drove her life and her sense of mission. She was always learning, always growing. So it's quite a crossroads that we find ourselves at now, at this point in time in American history and world history. We're in the midst of an economic crisis more severe than anything we've seen since the Great Depression. The economy is extremely unstable. The stock market is in turmoil. The value of many of our homes is plummeting. Our retirement incomes have been hit severely in some cases. Our wages have stagnated. Our standard of living has deteriorated. 45 million of us don't have health care. And those of us who do have health care have a lot of horror stories of our own.